When we are playing the Minesweeper game, basically we click on these cells and reveal and say how many neighbors there are. Now, it turns out there's a very, very useful feature, which is that of flagging a mine. So, for example, here I know that, between these squares, this thing is a mine. Now, in order for me to proceed further, I'm just going to right click my mouse button and put an M over there. Notice the moment I put an M, this square kind of like gets flagged as a mine. So even if I click on it, the game is not getting over because I know that it's possibly a mine. Likewise, I can put an M over here. I know this is not a mine. I know this is not a mine. I know this is not a mine. This is not a mine. In fact, none of these is a mine. Yeah, so I can just play on. Now here, again, this is not a mine. This is not a mine either. This is not a mine. This is not a mine. However, given these two, I think this is a mine. Now, what happens? Let's say if I click on a cell thinking it might be a mine, but later on as the game proceeds, I change my mind. But not a problem. For example, let's say I might think this is a mine and I move forward. Then I realize that, oh no, it can't be a mine because look, there's already a mine over here and this is one. So I can just go and right click once again to, let's say, undo this. And then I can just proceed, for example, here, right? So now seeing this, I can go on, but basically the idea is the same that look, every mine here I can keep marking, and that helps me in, let's say, solving this puzzle a bit more easily. So here we are. So this has to be a mine. This is not a mine. Well, now I know that this is a mine. So this is not a mine. Now this has to be a mine. uh, this must be a mine too. So I've got 1 2 3. So now one of these two has to be a mine, because 3 over here, so it's one of these two. Now I know that this must be a mine because of this 2 here. So I just go mine here and notice I solved the puzzle, right? So it kind of had an idea of where we are going. Now this is what we are going to build in this video. We are enhancing the Minesweeper project from the YByte Python curriculum, available at www.ybyte.in. Now, before writing any code, let's just take a step back and understand how this feature actually works. Well, like I said, flag allows us to mark a certain location that we think may be a mine. We can change our mind later on. This helps us in planning the gameplay. Some important points. Flag happens with the right click of the mouse. So we'll build this. Flag does not disable the button, as we just saw. It just toggles the text. So if there's nothing in written there, I can make it M, for example, right? And if there's an M and I want to change my mind, I right click again, it takes it back to the blank text. We saw all this, right? Once a button has been flagged, it needs to be unflagged before it can be brought into the gameplay. And what I mean is that, so what this means is that look, once a cell has been flagged, it's possibly a mine. So when I click on it, I'm not going to end the game right away. And the button that has been disabled cannot be flagged, which means, let's say I open up the whole field and I find that some button has been disabled, because it has opened up, well, then I cannot flag it, which is also quite logical. So let's just build this one by. I get back here to my code. Now, the first thing I need to do is to somehow enable, let's say, the right click of the button to be recognized. Now, the way we do this is basically in the, exactly the place where we tell what these buttons do when we click on them. So that's inside this create board function. Now, I'm just going to add another line over here, which is going to bind my right click of the mouse to a new function. Just like, my left click is bound to, let's say, the function called click on. So, I'm just going to say b dot bind. So b dot bind. And, so this is the way we do this for the right click is basically button -3. So button 3, you can say, and it must have these brackets. So this, does it. Say lambda event r equals to kk, c equals to jj. So it's kind of very similar to what we were doing earlier. But now the function is going to be called, in this case, it's going to be called, so I must have a colon over here, and the function is called, let's say, on right click. So this is the function I'm going to define, and this will have 3 arguments: event, r, and c. Now, obviously, this is just a placeholder right now. This basically is telling that, look, if I click on a certain button, if I go and click, let's say, the right click of the mouse, then go and call this function on right click. Now, we are going to just, let's say, define this function now. So I just go and say def on right click. So basically, what do we need to do? Well, remember, if the button is already disabled, then we do nothing. In fact, immediately get out from there. So I just go and say if buttons. So this is, there are three arguments here: event, R, and C. Right? If buttons, let's say R and C, and the state of this is, let's say, disabled. So if this state is equal to, say, disabled, that means the button has been probably opened up and hence it's disabled. I will just return because nothing happens for these buttons. However, if it is not, right, so if this is not the case, which means the button is actually active, so I'm just going to ask myself what is the text on the button. So I just go and say buttons, let's say R C, and I can read back the text by just say doing this. So txt, so that reads the text of the button. If it so happens that the text is, let's say, not equal to m, so if test, let's say test is, say, not equal to m, which means it's not already been flagged, well, I will go and set the text to, let's say, m. So I'll just go and set the text to, say, m. On the other hand, if it is indeed an M, well, like I said, we will, if somebody right clicks this M cell again, we will just go and toggle it back to normal, right? So this will kind of do the toggling mechanism. There's just one more change that needs to be done. Remember, once a mine has been flagged, if I go and click on it the regular way, the game should not end because basically I'm clicking a mine. And the way we do that is just going to, let's say, our open up, let's say, click on function over here. I just ask myself, look, if, say, buttons, say, R, C, and the text, say, is equal to M, well, that means this is a mine. I can just return from here. So nothing happens on a mine. So, which is quite logical, right? This should be pretty much it. So now when I run my code, let's say I play it like regular. So, a lot of things open up. I know this is going to be mine. Let's say I think this is also mine for the moment. I know this is a mine. I know this cannot be a mine. In fact, I suddenly realized, oh no, this can't be a mine because there was already a mine here. So I can just go and right click again. This gets unflagged. However, let's say I go and left click on these buttons, nothing is happening because, these are, let's say, recognized flagged as mine. So these will not let the game to get over. So in fact, the game can go on, quite useful because I can then plan my moves and say, okay, look, possibly these are the mines, get back to them and finalize the decision. So very useful and quite fun, right? I hope you enjoyed building this. I hope you found this interesting. Look at our website www.ybyte.in because we have many, many, many such activities through which we learn Python programming in a fun manner. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.